The mission is simple: to help high achievers naturally eliminate emotional and physical obstacles so they can optimize their life for higher achievement. Welcome. You have just entered the Genesis Zone. Hello, and welcome to the Genesis Zone show. This is Dr. Brian Brown, and we are so glad you're here today. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule, as usual, to be here. We know you could have been a million places, and you have chosen to be here with us today, and we don't take that for granted. We so appreciate that. You're in for a treat. As usual, I try to pick guests that really can share with us their expertise in this and in our ongoing Wellness Warriors series. Today, we're joined by Melissa Jones. Now, she's an inspiring girls empowerment coach and 22-year veteran teacher with over 22,000 hours of experience. Now, Melissa is founder of the Girls Positivity Club, which is an empowering environment where girls are motivated to learn daily positive habits so they can feel confident in who they are, develop healthy connections with other girls, and have the tools they need to live their best life. Melissa has shared her knowledge of empowerment and positivity for personal growth in media outlets such as Fox, CBS, NBC, CW, Forbes, Mensch, Authority Magazine, and Thrive Global. So for those in the listening audience, you may be wondering why I brought on today's show a girls empowerment expert. Well, I'll tell you, it's really simple. Each of us has that hurting inner child that we have to speak to and deal with on a continual basis. In my professional experience, people from all walks of life have struggled at one point or another with confidence, positive self-talk, overcoming perfectionism and people-pleasing, and building healthy self-esteem. In this Servant Leaders segment, Melissa, aka MJ, will be sharing her expert knowledge in the area of creating a healthy space for our inner child so we can be more empowered leaders. Now, MJ happens to do this with young girls, but in the grand scheme of things, we're all little children on the inside, and we have the same needs, wants, and desires that Melissa works with on a day-to-day basis. Welcome, Melissa Jones. How are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Glad to have you back. Had you on here about a month ago, and it was a great show. If you guys missed MJ's first show, first segment, her Overcomer segment, it's worth going back and listening to. Trust me. Thanks for joining us. And before we dive in to the main focus of our interview today, let's share with the audience a little bit about your professional backstory. How did you come to do what you do in teaching? How did you come to do what you do with Girls Positivity Club, and and just this whole career path change and moving into this zone of genius? Share with us a little bit of that backstory.
Thanks. I'd love to. So starting out in a teaching career, you don't know really where you're going to end up. You have this vision of teaching at a school forever and retiring there. I think that's the fantasy, I guess, when you first start teaching. It's kind of like a weird teacher fantasy. You think you're going to find your forever school, kind of like your forever home, and then you move 15 times. But anyway, I started in a small town, so small college town, Brethren College, Manchester College, and the community there was amazing. I taught there for 9 years, and from there, obviously developed my teaching skill, got amazing training, any kind of professional development I signed up for. This is pre-kids and everything, and so I was just like a sponge, wanting to just reach kids in any way I could and just really hone my craft. So I think really within my first 9 years of teaching is when I got my best training And it just made those foundational just tips and just strategies and working with kids and knowing what works. And I also had some pretty extreme behaviors in my classroom very early on. I think they were putting me through a little test in my first year, even jokingly. But I handled it really well, and it was a good character builder for me. I've had all kinds of kids from all kinds of different backgrounds. Kids who have thrown chairs in my classroom, and kids who have, I've broken up fights, and I've done all kinds of things. Had a mouse crawl through the middle of my classroom one time, and anyway, at a different school. So that's a whole story. But I moved from that small town to a private school. And so there I taught high ability students. So it was a private school called Sycamore, and they had to have an IQ of 125 at least to get in. And so that was a very special population. I had my high ability license. And looking back, even going from the small town school to the private school, I started seeing a pattern. And it always kind of fell within girls of just friendship issues, always come up with girls, just knowing who their true friends are, who their people are, and just a lot of more psychological things with girls and self-belief and confidence, whether it's related to certain subject area or just being confident in speaking up in their friend groups. Mm-hmm. And from private school, I ended up going to a charter school. That's where the mouse episode happened. And this is all in reflection, looking back of all of it. Obviously, you don't always see the dots connecting behind you. It's that Steve Jobs quote. It all makes sense when you look back and it all connects. But I went to this charter school, and most of our population, they had been kicked out of 5 and 6 schools before they came to us. I was drawn to it for the progressive education. It was very workshop based, which I love. It's very constructivist, which I love, and just very forward thinking. And our kids were really hard. They had a lot of emotional things, a lot of family things that were out of their control. And man, it was 2 years that were probably the hardest in my career, and pushed me to just limits that I never thought that I could reach, and in a good way. And I think all along the way, again, I saw that need. Girls were just craving this connection and craving this just sense of being seen and feeling like they're as good as others, and just wanting to really be part of something. And then I realized after being there for 2 years, I'm like, emotionally, it was just too much for me. I'm just very invested in students and everything. And so I went back to public school. So then that's where I went to the more not really small town, Noblesville. So now we have, close to 1 million people, but it's not, as it wasn't, really that big of a shift. It's weird because it doesn't really seem like it's that big, but, spread out everywhere and, whatever. And maybe it's probably, it seems like it's that big, but anyway, so we have 11 schools in our system. So that's pretty big. And again, the same pattern was coming up, just in friendships and in confidence, and not knowing if they could, work through a math problem and have the grit to do that, and doubting who they are compared to other girls and all this. And so through all of looking back in my teaching career, I just really felt drawn. I've always helped girls and always helped kids. I mean, I think that whether it's a boy or girl thing, part of being a teacher is you're a counselor too, really. I mean, you have a school counselor, but you're really doing counseling in your classroom all the time, because there are issues that come up all the time. It's like with a school nurse, you don't send the kid every time they need a Band-Aid, or, that nurse would be knocking on your door. And I have had that happen before. You have your recurring Band-Aid people, but you learn to buy a box and keep it in your classroom, and just direct that kid to the door or to the drawer. But anyway, so I did a lot of just counseling of girls specifically as a special population, especially after recess. And I co-taught with a partner teacher who's a guy, and he was like, I just don't get it. Like, why are the girls hanging on to all this stuff that happened at recess? Get over it. And, I had to explain to him that that's not really the way girls work. And so I always just kind of took that special interest in teaching them how to change their mindset and develop a growth mindset and to focus on their strengths and to do one good thing every day or to focus on one good thing that they've done or one way they can be assertive even without seeming bossy or having them raise their hand one time, even if they're not 100% sure that they're correct of the answer. So just a variety of things. And I just really wanted to do more with them because what I was able to do with the classroom wasn't really enough because I also have curriculum to teach. And I tried to embed as much theme and things I could when I saw it in book characters or in their writing, but it just still wasn't enough. So I offered at lunchtime in Noblesville that we would have these lunchtime meetings where I would teach them a little something about positivity and about, mindset. And we would talk about just anything that came up that they wanted. And I would even throw in nutrition and, just simple ways every day that they could take care of themselves. And they just loved it. They just ate it up literally. And then it turned into pouring into recess a little bit. This is only like a couple days a week and all voluntary. And then they wanted to start doing creativity things. So we started doing journaling. We started doing artwork. We started just having all these different outlets, which really, the research that I've done, it really has the same effect as meditation. And it really decreases stress. And it just really helps fight off that depression feeling and allows them to experience that sense of flow that we all strive for. And from there, it grew. I then extended to an after-school program, K through 5. And then I grew to 2 schools in my district. And then I started reaching out and working at the Boys and Girls Club because that's a special population in my community. A lot of them just have different home circumstances that are difficult. And then COVID happened. So then that's when I pivoted to all virtual, and that's what I've been ever since.
Oh, wow. So you're a busy person. You're in a
Yeah.
thank goodness for virtual, or you'd be going everywhere. You probably, I guess, at one school one day, one school the next day, and just kind of rotating around. Is that what you were doing?
Oh my gosh, it was so hard. So it was almost like a blessing in disguise because I was running myself ragged, and I was having, like, luckily in my homeschool, I was able to hold, some clubs there, and that part wasn't as bad because it was in my classroom. But then once I started branching out, I had to load all my supplies, all my art supplies and all of everything because they don't supply that for you, when you're doing your own thing. And just getting from dismissal of my school to the next location, especially when it was another school, because then the girls were waiting on me literally in the library. And I don't know if you've or your listeners have experienced like kids after school, but they pretty much lose their minds after school. They have held on all day and they are just ready to let loose. And so you walk in and I tell you what, I had 2 bags on my arms just full of everything. And they would all be like, surprise, they're just like really, or like, hi, and rolling around on the floor. And it's like, all right, we're going to get centered first and then we'll get into our things. So that part was really hard. And then the Boys and Girls Club, I didn't really have solid relationships with a lot of those girls. And even the other school, it's like you start something with them and you got to spend the time, them getting to know you and you taking interest in them so that they can trust you and so that they feel secure. And not that it's not like a therapy session where, we sit around and I make them share anything, that they would ever feel forced to do or whatever. But gosh, they sure want to share. I did a lesson on courage and I couldn't get to everybody. They just want to say so many things. And, but what a great thing. I mean, it was really great, but it did, like you said, it did open my eyes to, it was really hard to physically get to those places and also be teaching full time. So the pandemic really helped and was really a gift in that way. For me, that's how I chose to look at it, that although there were hard things, there were a lot of gifts and a lot of kind of hidden benefits that came from it.
Right. What's just out of curiosity, what age range are we talking about here?
Yeah. So kindergarten through 5th grade. And I would say a little bit into 6th grade. Yeah.
That's a huge age range.
Yeah. Yes. And what I learned very quickly obviously I know about the development of children. I've worked with children for 22 years.
Mm,
Developmentally, they're very different at kindergarten, obviously, as they are in fifth
hmm.
grade.
Hmm.
And although it was great to have a K through 5 program, I would definitely break it up into a primary and then an intermediate, because
Hmm.
what I did was I used the older kids as leaders, and I
Right.
had them kind of partner up with a little, because, you have a kindergartner crawling in the reading tent in the corner. And then you have, the fifth grader who's trying to, be present and take
Hmm.
in.
Hmm.
So it was definitely, I had to think of activities. So I would make up all these games that were related to, because kids love to play games. They love to be creative. Those are the like driving force. And so
Right.
when you embed your teaching within that, they're super engaged. So one of the things, I took the headbands game, and I had positive affirmations like on the headband, and they had
Hmm.
to act out what the affirmation was. And so
Oh,
then that
wow.
got them to talk about it, and then give examples. And so I tried to make it as interactive as I could, but
Mm,
um, it was definitely a challenge to have K through 5, 25 girls all in one spot
mhm.
after school. So definitely rethinking, the structure when I get back to in person. So,
Right.
but
And
it's fun.
virtually probably has its own challenges because I guess
Yeah.
they're in their home environment, right?
hmm
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think in the beginning of even teaching online, because I did, from March to May, and it was more reactive teaching, I would say, than it was just
Mhm.
be more planned, because obviously we went home on a Friday, and by Tuesday we were full on, teaching virtually, which was a huge shift that we'd never
Right.
done before. But I was so proud of our school system, because we pivoted like it was the most natural thing, even though it was really hard. But yeah, I would say kids are better virtually now. I think they learn the etiquette, and we taught them the etiquette early on,
Mm,
because at
mm.
first you saw eyeballs and dogs in the background, and, siblings and people eating chips during your lesson and forgetting to mute themselves. And you're trying to figure out how to mute them. And then, like, I had some friends, they had kids who jumped on a trampoline during their lesson. And so all this stuff. And so they're really good. And especially my girls in my groups are very motivated to be there. So, and most of them are in that fourth, fifth, and sixth grade. Intermediate age is the age that feels really drawn, even to do it in the virtual environment.
Mm,
So I think that's made it a lot easier. And they're really good
mhm,
about using all the tools and
mhm.
everything.
So, thank you for sharing that. Just out
Mhm.
of curiosity, is there a funny story that kind of sticks out in your mind that when you started doing? I'm sure you got plenty. If you're doing K through
Yeah.
5, I'm sure you got plenty. But just a
Yes.
humorous story that really sticks out in your mind that you would want to share.
Oh Lord, yes. Well, okay. I'll share one. There's so many. Kids are hilarious, and I can do so
Mm,
many funny impressions. Like, and I don't. But yeah, it's funny. Kids are hilarious, and it's just so carefree. So when
mm,
I went to the Boys and Girls Club for the very first time, it was announced. So it's a very it's kind of fluid in the activities that they can choose to do. So they've got like a game room, like a rec room. They can go up to a computer lab and like do things. There's an art room, and so they have different zones and where they can go, and a
mhm,
gym. And then they were doing Just Dance in another room. There's like a cooking facility. It's just like amazing. And so the director made an announcement that I was there, and she was making a big deal and hyping it way up. And I had some girls that I knew who were there, and they were helping hype it. And so they made the announcement that they were going to come to the room. And I didn't realize it was candy day at the concession stand. So apparently on a certain day of the month, like the kids can just openly buy candy. And
uh,
so they came in like barreling in, first of all. Then they had like the ring pops like hanging out of their mouth. They had like suckers, and they were like
mm,
pouring their Skittles and all this stuff. And so there was also a movie announcement that was happening, like Frozen 2 was going to be played. And so they were like counting down for that. And I'm trying to like intro this club and make it fun. And so we're playing this game where they have to act different things out. And I'm trying to make it really interactive and tie in the positive things and make it fun. And they were just more concerned with their candy and, sitting on each other's laps and like laying around and rolling around and just all this stuff. And so I'm like trying to stay calm and just trying to get them back. It was just like cats. Like they were just like little cats
It
everywhere.
was like herding cats.
And
Yeah.
so, yes, it literally, I mean, and I didn't know half the girls' names. And so I'm really fast at names. When I co-taught, we had 68 students that we shared together, my partner teacher and I had the names down. I made a bet with him. I had him down by lunch. Like I knew every kid's name. So I'm pretty fast with names, but this time I was like, I don't even know who you are. All I know is you have a red ring pop. So, and then they kept leaving and coming back and leaving. I'm like, okay, everyone's going to stay. You know, it was just like all these random things that I didn't expect. And it was just crazy. So it ended up being fine and we had fun, but it's just like, oh my gosh, it was one of the craziest times. I'm like, what is going on? I'm like, and they don't know me, you know? So then it's like at my school, I have a reputation and they know I'm a teacher and I don't know. It's just so different. I just did not expect. That's one thing I learned is like, I have to develop relationships really quickly with these girls, especially my first meeting, because if I don't, then they don't have the connection with me.
There's no connection. Yeah.
That's part of it. Yeah. So I just have to do it really quickly. So
and I'm sure it's quite difficult to develop that connection when they're hyped up on sugar.
Yes. And also like talking about Frozen the whole time and wanting, when is Frozen? I'm like, okay, yep, you're going to go see Frozen. They're like, when is it? And so it's like, it's almost like sometimes like you're in an insane asylum, like, you know, all the like random comments left and right. So it's funny. I love working with kids. They're hilarious, but yeah, that was like a weird, crazy, funny time. Now looking back, like at the time I was sweating. I had probably like sweat rings. I was trying to get myself together. So
now it's old hat. You're used to that.
Yeah, no, I'm like, whatever. I know what to do.
So in our servant leader segments, we focus on experts who serve their clients at the highest level. When I was prepping for the show, I found some interesting pieces of information that I'd like to ask you some more details about, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
All right, because these are actually some things that I think not only apply, you obviously apply to Girls Positivity Club, but I pulled out some things that I think will apply universally to adults as well. One is intentional complimenting. Let's talk about intentional complimenting, whether we're doing this towards someone else or we're intentionally complimenting ourselves. Let's talk about that.
Oh my gosh. Yes. This is one of my favorite topics. So women, especially, now I know there are men too out there that do this, have a hard time accepting a compliment. And I didn't realize it until I started doing research on it. And I had this aha moment. It's like, oh my gosh, I've done all of these things. And I think for adults, I think it becomes a habit of how we react to compliments. And so I've found 3 categories that they fall under. So one is you minimize the compliment and you say, oh, it's no big deal. You know, I already had this project lined up and it kind of fell into place, and you kind of minimize that compliment. And so that is something that I know I've done, because it's almost like you don't want to seem too braggy and you don't want to seem full of yourself. And that's most people. And when you get a compliment, it can sometimes make you feel uncomfortable because you don't know how to handle it. And the other way is you reject it completely. You're just like, no, that was terrible. I could have done so much better. And you're almost like putting yourself down in the process, because it's like you don't feel like you're good enough to receive the compliment, or in your mind, especially being a perfectionist, and I think we can all relate to that, at least to a little degree, is some perfectionism. And that's something actually girls struggle with. But you want to just completely focus on what you didn't do well, because then again, you're trying to deflect it and just trying to take that attention away from the compliment. And maybe you don't even believe that it was that big of a deal or it was easy for you. So to you, it shouldn't be a complimented thing, because, you know, you do that all the time. So so that's another way. And then the third way is to give credit to someone else. So just saying, oh, it was Brian, you know, Brian did all the research, all the legwork, you know, Cynthia did the other part. And it was really just a team effort. You know, really it was them. I was just there and I just pulled it together, made it look pretty or whatever it is. And so once I brought those 3 things to my attention, it was like, oh my gosh, I have done all of those things. And so I have totally changed my thinking. And now I'm more conscious of when someone gives me a compliment. For example, this morning, I had this old pair of leggings on when I went to my workout. It was 6 a.m. and I'm signing in. They're taking my temperature and I'm signing in on my bike or whatever. And one of the girls is like, I love your leggings. I'm thinking in my mind, like, I have had these things forever and they are like not that cute to me. Like, I ran through that in my head, but I did not say it out loud because myself in the past, I would have told her that. But instead, I stopped myself and I said, thank you. My mom got these for me. And that was the end of the conversation. So before, I would have kind of backpedaled and just kind of gone on about, oh, how they were old. And, it had a hole in this one part. I don't know. I mean, I would have, like, who knows what, said all these crazy things. But I catch myself now. And it's so hard online, even when I'm posting like a media win that I've had or an article that I've written or something like that. And I'm trying to obviously, let people know about the work that I do with girls and through media is how we do that. And when someone says it's so amazing or what a great job I did, it's so hard for me not to downplay it or do one of the 3 things. And so now I just say thank you. And I just say thank you so much, or thank you for your kind words. I don't even say, I don't know how I would downplay it. I don't say something like, oh, I've been working on it for a while, or I don't know. You can just put in your own narrative. But I think it's so important that even on social media, you just say thank you. And you don't have to go into the whole story about the credit or it was no big deal or whatever. You don't have to do any of those things. And to me, it was making myself aware of it and then stopping the habit. So again, it just is being so intentional, just stopping yourself. And if you do mess up, you're like, oh, shoot, because I did make a mistake on it a couple weeks ago. I had a media, thing, and one of my colleagues was like, oh my gosh, you were killing it, And then I started talking about something that wasn't going well. I was like, Melissa, you know better than this. But then the next day, and I obviously didn't plan it, this lady that I knew who was an assistant came in. She was like, oh my gosh, I just want to stop and tell you, I'm so proud of you. I saw this and that you did. And learning from what had just happened with my other colleague, I just said, thank you so much. That is so kind of you. And I just changed it. So I think too, if you mess up and you start to do one of those 3 things, then you just the next time tell yourself, all right, I'm just going to say thank you. And I'm going to stop that negative talk in my head. And that's what we need to do for kids too, is early on, teach them these skills so that they can also just truly feel proud. Like, yeah, it is a big deal that I wrote an article for Thrive, or it is a big deal that I, was on Fox or whatever it is.
Right.
So just to sit in that for a second and be okay with being proud of yourself for something that you don't have to minimize it.
Yep. So out of curiosity, going back to when you were telling kind of your origin story professionally, you were talking about all the different school settings that you were in over the years and how these universal truths or patterns you were noticing in these girls. And regardless of socioeconomic status or behavior problems or no behavior problems, did you see this same issue play out where
Yes.
there was a natural tendency to deflect any type of compliment?
Yes, there are reasons that kids do this, I've found. Some kids don't like the attention. They're embarrassed by it. And so for those kids, or even adults, there are more introverted people who feel very uncomfortable, even when they are clearly brilliant at something and they know it's a strength or a talent. So what I've found is the private complimenting is better for them, and just, off to the side or just whispering it to them like, this is amazing. They take it a lot better if you do that. Because some kids and some people like a big to-do. They like the celebration. They like the
I
announcement.
like the spotlight.
They do. And I think it's okay to feel both sometimes. I think we can all feel in one of these categories, but I am really big in my classroom on, I tell them, where do you want to be? Do you want to be in an environment that is grouchy and where people focus on the negative things and complain? Or do you want to
Mm,
be in a place where we cheer each other on? Literally, we clap for each
mm,
other. We notice each other's little things. And so I've trained them to compliment each other and to give each other encouragement. And we do these things called tiger tickets. And so they nominate each other for good things that they've noticed, even during a kickball game at recess. And
mm,
so for some kids, they like the attention, but others, they just want it to be more of a private thing. And I think
mhm,
too, you can think of compliments as like gifts. I mean, you wouldn't be rude to someone if they gave you a gift, and most
good
people
point.
wouldn't. You wouldn't do that. And so a compliment really is a gift. And if you have a pattern of deflecting or minimizing or doing one of the other things, it's like people are going to stop giving you compliments, because not that you do things for compliments, but it's like it
Hmm.
almost is throwing it in their face, and they won't want to give you a compliment anymore because they've got to go through all the negativity that you're going to
Hmm.
start.
Hmm.
And so it's not their job really to convince you that you did a good job. They just wanted
Hmm.
to say you did a good job. So to me, the
Right.
simplified version is say thank you and move on.
So, out of curiosity, just kind of going back into your childhood, do you feel like you personally had this modeled for you well with the adults in your life?
Yeah, my mom was really big on thanking people and manners and
Mm,
showing that you're grateful. That was really big. But I think another thing that I just realized as you were saying that is I think some people struggle with it too because they don't feel like they're good enough for the
mm,
compliment. And so I think there's some self esteem work that needs to be
mm,
done there, or like
mm,
they don't truly believe that it's enough, especially when you're an achiever. I fight
mm.
this all the time. It's like, oh, what's the next thing that I have to do? And you're like moving on to the next thing. It's like, how many
Yep.
next things do there have to be for me to feel good about what I'm
Right.
doing?
Right.
But I think it is environmental. And that's one thing we have to model for our own kids is, and to our friends, is that we can take compliments and we can give them. And it doesn't mean that we're conceited or, very full of ourselves at all. It just
Mm.
is a way that you show gratitude and show love for someone else. And so that reframe has been really crucial for me and for kids too. And they need
Yeah, and
help with that.
it's such a valuable lesson to learn early. And, for
Hmm.
those in the listening audience, obviously adults, start getting that right for yourself, start reprogramming that in yourself so you can
Hmm.
model that for your children, and the little ones around you, because they're always watching. I,
They are.
I didn't, I had a grandmother that she was one of the best cooks, and you say, "Oh, Granny, this is so great," and she said, "Well, I'm glad you think it is because I think it's horrible."
I know.
It was that constant, and like
Yes.
I think she was a world class chef. She could bake
Yeah.
anything, and but she never took a compliment ever, and
Don't you think it's perfectionism? Like she probably was a perfectionist.
she was a consummate perfectionist. Yeah,
Yes.
to her own detriment, I think. Super
Yeah.
high achiever. So,
Hmm.
and I think high achievers, you're right. I think they deal with that. I think they go, it could have been better. Move on to the next thing,
Hmm.
and let's make the next one
Hmm.
better. And they
Yep.
don't take time to celebrate, you know,
Yeah.
that compliment as a gift. And I love that image that you gave us, is that you wouldn't throw a gift back at somebody, you wouldn't reject that gift. Um,
No.
you would accept it graciously, and that's what a
Hmm.
compliment is. So simple, so
Totally.
simple.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Totally. That's what I have to do is think of it as a gift. Yeah.
yeah.
Because
And
otherwise
and
we
I
run into that.
and
Hmm.
sadly, I think there are a lot of adults who deal with it.
Hmm.
And it's been going on for a long time. It's been going on since their childhood.
Yep.
That's so simple. Anybody can take that and run with it.
Yeah, and
So
I
the next
think
thing,
even in
go ahead.
childhood, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you at all.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was thinking in childhood, sometimes kids take compliments as a pressure to perform. So they think
Mm,
if their parent gives them a compliment, they see it as, oh my gosh, I've got to keep doing this good work. Like, oh, that was great. That's why I have to be careful, not just complimenting kids on achievement, because we've also got to compliment kids on, and colleagues and adults too, on effort and on their kindness and on empowering things that they're doing and on positive attitude and all of those things, because there is a very dangerous spot where we can put kids into a lot of pressure. And then that's when a lot of anxiety can happen. And that's when I've seen it in the classroom. They feel so much pressure that they think their parents want to perform a certain way that they become their own worst enemy. And I think that's when that internal voice starts. And so then they never feel like they're doing enough. And so it just kind of settles in there. So I think the pressure to perform is another, even with adults, is another reason that we do this.
Well, I think you mentioned, teaching kids, girls journaling. And I
Yes.
think for adults, that's especially important as well, because we don't often get that kind of feedback from our
Mhm.
environment, the people around us. So we kind of have to do that to ourselves. And, one of our mentors that we met through that group says, celebrate your wins, write down your
Yes,
gratitudes. And I think that's that complimenting of giving yourself a pat on the back that, hey, you know what? I did a good job today. I didn't get everything done that I
yes,
wanted to get done, but I got a heck of a lot done and I'm proud of what I got done. And I'm going to celebrate that.
absolutely.
Yeah. Yep.
Yes, I've done that. There was a day where I was so down on myself because I wanted to do these 3 things, because I try and pick 3 needle moving things that I can do every day. And I was just beating myself up mentally. And
Mm,
I thought, you know what? I'm going to take that advice, that our leaders have taught us. And I wrote down everything I did do. I filled a page front and back. And I
mm,
felt so shocked because I found all these wins. And then once it just started multiplying. And so then as I wrote one, I thought of 2 others, and then I thought of 2
mm.
others. And so then I felt so much better. So I've started keeping a journal beside my bedside table. And there are times I just run through it in my mind, but there are times I also grab my journal and I write those things out. And then a
Right.
journal is another good way to release. And it could be stream of consciousness writing, but it can also be, I call it with the girls, negative thought rip up, where if you are just feeling just weighed down with your thoughts, and I call it with the girls, the tornado of negativity. If it's just
Mm,
swirling around your mind, you're not able to release it in other ways like moving or, creativity or other things. I just say, write it all out. And one of the most powerful moments I had with the girls is I modeled this in front of them. And I didn't make them do this, but I shared out loud to them all of the negative thoughts I'd ever taught or thought of myself. And I
mm,
filled a page front and back, and I read a lot of them out loud to them. It was like, I'm ugly, I'm fat, I am stupid, I can't, whatever. And it was all true.
mhm,
They almost fell over. Like, they could not believe I had ever thought of any of that about myself.
mhm,
And so I had, like I said, I didn't make them read it out loud. But I had them write it down. And me being vulnerable with them first and sharing that, and that's the key
mm,
to connection, really,
mm,
is I did that first. And then I said, all right, there it is. You know my things. And there are
mhm.
days where I think a lot of these, but what we have to do is fight it off. And this is how you can do it. And so they
Right.
wrote it down, and then we just ripped it to shreds, and then just had like a little confetti, or we just like crumpled it up. And I know that sounds so basic, and a lot of people have probably done it before, but it's so freeing to just get it
Mm,
out and release it. And then there's something about ripping it up or crumpling it up, and just there's some connection with the physical part of doing it that just helps
mhm,
your mind release it, I think.
mm. And you call that the tornado of negativity?
Yeah, that's when I
When you're caught
say
in
to
that
the girls,
cycle?
yeah, and they get caught in that cycle.
Yeah. And the
Yeah.
exercise is writing down all those negative thoughts that you're having and then
Yep.
just tearing them up, throwing them away.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's one of their favorite things to do.
So simple.
They love it.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
you're right, and there's a lot of good research behind those principles of physically going through an act
Mhm.
to get rid of or discard something. That's why I tell people, if you're holding offense or hurt against another person, you don't feel comfortable talking to them about it. Sometimes just simply writing it out and
Yes.
folding it up and just throwing it away. Sometimes that simple act,
Yes.
it just gets rid of it, and it allows you to
Yeah.
let it go. Yeah.
I've also written letters to people, and I never gave it to them. I just needed to say
Right.
all
Yep.
the things. It's
Yep.
the same thing. And it isn't
Yep.
necessarily even that I would want to say those things out loud to them, but it helped me forgive and it helped me just
Mm,
deal with it a lot healthier.
yeah.
Yeah. And I teach the
Well,
girls that too.
backtracking just a little bit about
Yeah.
perfectionism, because we talked about perfectionism just very, very briefly. I know you deal with that, the perfectionism and the
Mhm.
people pleasing.
Yes.
How do you deal with that? How do you coach a young child through that? And for us adults, it would be coaching our own hurting inner child. How would you lead somebody down the path of kind of overcoming that?
Yeah. So these are two of the biggest issues with girls because, I did research and 7 in 10 girls think that they're not good enough in some way. And a
Mm,
lot of times it does lead back to the perfectionism and the
mm,
people pleasing. And I think it starts with our childhood really and what we're praised for, I think, and what we're praised for even in the classroom, because mostly girls are praised for people pleasing, kindness, being gentle, and those things. And boys tend to be complimented and praised for being assertive, for being leaders and
mm,
things. And so what I've done is shifted and had conversations with the girls about how raising your hand or being assertive doesn't mean that you are aggressive, and
mm,
teaching them the difference between the two.
mhm,
And that the more we do this, the more they take the chance. Because what I'm finding is girls have a fear of, and I think boys do too, but girls especially are so scared to raise their hand because they don't want to be
mhm.
seen as stupid in front of other people. And I think we
Yep.
all can have that fear. But in my experience, boys tend to brush it off easier if they're wrong when they raise their hand. And so
Mm,
I recently surveyed my class even. And I said, how many of you have not raised your hand because you're not 100% sure of the answer? Pretty much every hand went up.
mhm,
Okay, how many of you only raise your hand if you're 100% sure? Same. And I scan the
mm,
room, every girl.
mm,
And so it's like, then that helps me know how to talk to them about doing one thing. We talked about this in the last interview, one thing. I keep it very simple. What is one thing you can do today to push yourself out of your comfort zone? What is
mm,
one thing you can do to tell yourself it's okay if I make a mistake? And then I teach them about growth mindset and how making mistakes helps you grow, and failing fast and all of those things. Because if we're not teaching them how to talk themselves through that,
mhm,
then they don't know how to do it. And so I use my own examples in school. So I always
mhm,
tell them it took me way longer than most children to learn how to tell time. And I said, could you look at me and tell that it took me a very long time to know how to tell time? You're like, no. Well, I mean, now that you told us, I'm like, okay, yes, now that I told you. But before that, um, kids are very literal sometimes, but it's like, yeah, you would not know that. But guess what? I can tell time now. So teaching them also that things take time and that it's okay if someone gets something at a different speed than you, and that it doesn't mean that you're bad at something if something feels uncomfortable, and that learning is, and you are in discomfort when you're learning, and although it feels uncomfortable and you want everything to go easily, that's not learning. In school or in life shouldn't be easy all the time. If it's easy all
mm,
the time, you're really not taking any chances and you're
mhm,
really not pushing yourself. And so I teach the girls all of that. And so a lot of mindset work and in thinking about failure and thinking about taking chances, speaking up when you have an idea in a friend group, how to do that. I mean, just saying, hey guys, what about this? And then talking through, all right, what happens if they shoot it down? If they say, no, that's terrible, that's dumb, then what do you do?
mhm,
And so
mhm,
we run through
mhm,
scenarios that I found over the years in teaching are very common in kids. And because I don't know why, I think it must be because I'm around kids all the time. I connect really easily with it. And I think I draw from my own inner child in the recess interactions I had about being scared to walk over and join the jump rope, or playing kickball, being afraid of being picked last
mm,
and being afraid that I was going to strike out in front of everybody. And
mhm,
just having those experiences, they still relate to that because it
mhm,
all is how people see you. And I think,
Mhm.
again, just teaching them the reframing around, all right, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? If you raise your hand, you're wrong. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? And so I do worst case, best case with them. And you can also write this out, but they say, everyone will laugh at me. Okay, what else? Um, People will think I'm dumb. How do you know that? And then they start like processing through,
Mhm.
okay, what else? And so they get, and then they stop, because it really is more about just how people perceive them, which I think then
Mhm.
goes into the people pleasing. And then I say, all right, let's do best case. What's the best thing that's going to happen if you raise your hand and you're wrong? Well, at least I tried. Yes, what else? And so then they're like, well, now the teacher knows I might need help. Okay, good. What else? Now other
Mhm.
kids think that they can raise their hand and not be made fun of. Yes. What if no one makes fun of you? What if you're the person who raises their hand and you give others encouragement? Like, oh, nothing bad happened when she said the wrong answer. So I'm going to raise my hand next time. Just doing
Mhm.
something simple like that is like, then they go, oh, I'm like, do you think everyone's going to stop liking you?
Mhm.
Maybe. Okay. Are those the people you want to surround yourself with? Like, do you want to be around people who are like that? So then I go into a thing about surrounding yourself with positive people and encouragers, and who are the people you want to be around. And so it kind of leads into its own kind of curriculum around it. But I think just embedding that thinking really early
Mhm.
is, to me, what's key.
Mhm. Yeah, and everybody's journey is different. That first thing that you were talking about, of just ingraining in them that everybody's journey is different. It's going to be a
Yeah.
little bit longer for some, a little bit shorter for others. It's going
Yeah.
to be take a different path. Some people are going to take a different path, and that's okay. We all get to where we're supposed to be going in the long run, and
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's excellent. How you're doing that. And I think there's a lot of applicable lessons there for adults as well, because I think we put pressure on ourselves to be
Yes.
perfectionistic. And I think you're right. I think that stems way back into childhood. Um, that
Mhm.
um, that it started there, and it's just carried forward. And we've got to learn to deal with it.
Mhm.
And thank goodness for people like you that are helping young girls learn how to deal with it now versus when they're 40 or 45,
Yeah.
and they've laid a lifetime of foundational bad ways of doing things. So yeah,
Yeah. Totally.
kudos.
Because that's what I did. I mean, I waited until I was well into my 30s before I figured it out. And
Mm,
thank goodness I did. I mean, I'm proud that I did, but I just think about, oh my gosh, it's almost like my organization is teaching what I needed as a girl. And
mhm,
that's because it still relates. And I
yep,
try and stay really in touch with what the girls are saying, and just really listen to them. And it really does fall into those two categories. And it's really about caring what other people think about them. And I think about, oh my gosh, all along, that was my biggest struggle, feeling good enough and feeling like worrying about what people thought of me, when really they were probably just thinking about themselves and worrying about what other people were thinking about them.
right.
Or maybe not at all. But it's just so crazy how it's like I am really healing who I was as a girl. And then a byproduct is obviously I'm expanding and I'm helping other girls. And I also think that even when you are really confident, you still belong to a positive group, because
Mm,
that never, to me, it doesn't mean something has to be wrong to belong to a group who's positive or who's empowering, because to me, you surround yourself with empowering people, and then you
mhm,
just up level each other, and you're just going to reach more, you know levels of growth, and you're just going to be better and better for it. So
mhm. I totally agree. Um, Other than what we talked about here, are there any other last nuggets or advice that you'd like to share, with the audience as far as nurturing that inner child?
yeah, I think there are things that we just have to forgive ourselves for as children. And there are things that I think some of us have held on to a very long time. And
Mm,
I think there has to be that moment where you just say, okay, I did that. It was a mistake. I'm learning from it, I'm letting it go. And whatever that means, whether it's journaling or whether it's having a hard conversation with someone, or if it's just mentally saying to yourself, I'm not that person anymore. I'm better for it. I'm growing from it or whatever. I think that's one. And then another is I think of just the way that I frame my day and thinking of the good things. And I think you can do this as a family. You can do this as an individual. Like you had mentioned earlier, the wins. Not only that, but it's all in what you focus on. We can focus on all the things wrong. I could go around this house and I could point out every flaw of this house, right? We could do it with our bodies. We could do it with our career, with our business, with everything. It's like, yeah, you could sit around and you could dwell on, these 3 things that are going poorly. And that doesn't mean, my son always says, it's not all unicorns and rainbows, Mom. But, I like unicorns and rainbows, but you don't ignore it, but you focus on what is good. Because when you shift that, it's like, even if you have a hard day and you just go, wait a minute, what were a few good things? Oh yeah, this happened, and this happened. And then again, it just triggers that part of your brain. It's like, it's a chain reaction. So instead of a tornado of negativity, it becomes like a cloud of positive things that fills your head. And so that has been so helpful. Even with your kids, I tell my son every morning, it's going to be a great day. And Chris says that in our group, you tell yourself it's going to be a great day, and you have a better chance of it being a great day if you tell yourself it's going to be. And you're not telling yourself it's going to be a perfect day. You're going to say it's going to be a great day. And no matter what, you can look back at the day and you can find good in it. And I think the more that we can reframe and just take one day at a time and not beat ourselves up about the things that went wrong yesterday, and just be better the next day, or pick one area to just do a little bit more that next day of improvement, if that's something that you want to do, or just focus on one more good thing, then to me, that's where you feel the happiest.
Yep. No, I totally agree. And you're exactly right. We will find exactly what we tell ourselves to look for. I mean, how many times have you looked for, let's say, a shoe? The dog has carried off a shoe, and you're looking for one of your shoes in the house, and you're so keyed in on looking for that shoe that you finally find the shoe, but then you realize, I don't know where my keys are and I've got to leave. And then you go for the search for the keys and you realize, oh, they were right by that shoe. Why didn't your brain pick up on the fact that the keys were there? It's because you didn't tell your brain to look for it. And and that's exactly it. If you tell yourself this is going to be a rotten day, it's going to be a rotten day, because you're going to find everything to back that up. If you tell yourself it's going to be a great day, your brain is going to look for ways to say, yeah, this really was a great day. This, and this, and this happened. So love that. Love that piece of advice.
Yeah. I think it's so helpful. We do that around the dinner table.
With Girls Positivity Club, are there any interesting projects that you're working on right now that listeners would like to hear?
Yes. I'm always working on projects. It's my obsession. It's my passion. So I am really not a membership. And so it's in its baby stages, but it's very affordable for families. And so it's a $30 membership, and we do creative pieces every week. That's what the girls want to do. They really want to do DIY and creativity. And so I just tie in those positive habits. And so I'm just going to expand that. I'm working on a whole package and an affiliate program with the girls, so that when they bring more girls on, they're able to get a kickback. And so that's going to empower them to see that they can also be business women and be, and feel the impact, not only that they have on bringing girls into our club because it's powerful and they already love it, but that they can also earn something. And I think that's empowering in itself, and just seeing themselves in that way. And I'm also rolling out in this summer a leadership program, some camps. And so I have notebooks full of ideas, but lots to come. And I just want to help as many girls as I can, and just help them just know that they can do all kinds of things. And, boys can too, but girls need that extra boost to just know that they can be leaders, and they can be equal, and they can be their best self, and that you don't have to hate on guys. You can you can support each other, but you can also lift other girls up instead of it being seen as competition.
Mm-hmm.
You can lift those girls up and be in a group that cheers each other on. And that's what it's all about to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're exactly right. As a dad to two young adult, headstrong, strong-willed women,
Yeah.
I could totally relate to that. And now, I have a 3-year-old granddaughter, and I can see the utility in all of this. And we, I think, organically, because of the things that we have been through in our childhood, we kind of organically tried to instill a lot of this in our girls. But there were still some areas,
Yes.
just listening to you, or like, gosh, we could have done that a little bit different. We could have done that a little bit different. So I'm excited for, our 3-year-old granddaughter to be able to have access to something like this. If somebody need to get in touch with you, wanted to learn more about it, I mean, how can they get in touch with you right now, or how can they learn more about this?
Yeah, thank you. Girlspositivityclub.org. It has everything there, all of the signups, all of the philosophy, my media features and everything. They can check all of it out. And there's plenty of buttons where they can connect with me and set up a call or just send a quick message. And
Good.
all the social, I'm on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Girls Positivity Club, just keeping it simple.
Good. As usual, I like to end the interview with kind of a fun question. What's the most awkward thing that's happened to you or happens to you on a regular basis?
Oh man. So an awkward thing that happened to me. Okay, that happens. Can it be in high school? Is that fine?
I don't care. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, whatever. I can share one today too. So in high school, I had gone to the bathroom, and I had this back, in the early '90s. I had like a little skirt on, and this is when we wore hose or tights or whatever. And I had tucked my skirt into my hose, and I was walking out of the bathroom and caught it at the last second. So that was like humiliating to me, even though only people around in the bathroom, which I don't think anyone saw, but that was like the most humiliating thing, that I could have walked around with my skirt tucked into my, tights. But I would say just today, I'm pretty comfortable in my own skin. Like I say probably, I don't know, awkward things. My son always thinks that I say the most cringy things he says in the Gen Z talk, or he always says like, Mom, no one says that. You don't understand Gen Z. So he always thinks I'm awkward with different comments that I make. I'm like, whatever. I don't even know what you're talking about.
He's a middle schooler. That's your job as a parent, is to embarrass him. Yeah.
Lord. Oh, Lord help me. I know his middle school age is, I'm learning a lot. Yeah, I'm learning a lot. But yeah, I mean, I think I pretty much go with the flow, probably just saying something that just comes out. And I'm like, well, I probably shouldn't have said that, or I could have said that another way. And then I'm like, oh, well, Melissa, just move on. It's fine. And if they think it was awkward, then, so be it. So I've gotten better at that, I would say. But I'm sure there are a million stories I could share too.
Yeah, I'm sure there are a million stories we could all share. All right. As we wrap up, I'd like to just bring to our thinking that women represent one of the fastest growing segments of the professional workforce. And according to Forbes magazine, women control or influence as much as 85% of consumer spending in the United States alone. Now more than ever, we need people like MJ to help empower girls to become empowered young women. And I dare say teach all of us how to nurture our hurting inner child so we can live and perform at the highest levels possible. MJ, thank you so much for being here today. And thank you for sharing your expertise with young girls that actually applies to all of us, that inner child in all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate it. And yeah, I think we all just need to get in touch with that inner child and just do one of the things that we mentioned. And one thing is better than none. That's what I always say. Thank you so much.
It goes back to your first interview. Again, if you didn't listen to that, you need to go back and listen to it. It's all about baby steps. It's all about baby steps. Yeah.
Yep. One thing.
All right. So as we wrap up, again, I'd like to make our listeners aware of something new. I recently launched my brand new Gene Hack Bootcamp, and it's gotten rave reviews. I'm going to be doing another boot camp soon. The name of the boot camp is called the Gene Hack Bootcamp. And using my proprietary Genesis Zone method, I teach you how to know exactly which of your 5 zones are creating lower physical, emotional, and mental performance for you. And I show you exactly which genes need to be checked within each of those zones in order to propel you to higher levels of physical, mental, and emotional performance. So if you have any questions about that, or want to know more about the next release, go to drbriangBrown.com/Gene Hack. That's GeneHack to get on the waiting list for the next bootcamp. And if you have any questions about the Gene Hack Bootcamp, you can direct message me on Facebook or Instagram at Dr. Brian G. Brown, or simply go to drbriangBrown.com/question. Click on the button in the middle of the page. Leave me your question. I'll be glad to answer it when it pops into my inbox. Tune in tomorrow at noon Eastern Standard Time for our regular In the Zone segment, where I'll be recapping today's interview with MJ. I'll be sharing how the nuggets from this interview fit into the Genesis Zone Advantage, answering any questions that have come in, and exploring other current event topics related to high performance and high achievement. Most informed, most trusted, and most grateful you spent this time with us today. Until next time, stay in the zone. I'm Dr. Brian Brown.